A show that tackles the big issues affecting the BVI and the rest of the Caribbean. Searches for answers to today's big questions and gives viewers a unique perspective on developing stories. Follow the big story with me, Kathy Richards, only on JTV. This show is brought to you by the National Bank of the Virgin Islands, Cyril B. Ramney Tertola Pier Park, NV Salon Spa Nail and Barbershop, the Wellness Center, Medical and Behavioral Health Clinics, Ticely Cross Deliciously Smooth Cider, HOV Medical, and Digicel. Sign up for Digicel Plus Home Light Bundles, faster internet, movies, and sports. This is the big story. I'm Kathy Richards. I want to thank you so much for joining us for this edition. We have back on set after quite a while, Bishop John Ivan Cline.
Quite a while.
You've been so quiet.
But it's necessary.
Why?
There are times when you just have to sit, observe what's going on before you can lend your voice. You don't want to just cheapen your voice everywhere, talking about everything. There's a time to talk, and there's a time to be quiet.
And observe and take in all the juices.
Absolutely, because I believe it's imperative that when we speak from a point of information, and we speak from a point of purpose, and not just speak to speak.
Okay, the street says it in this way. How the country running?
Backwards. If I use one single word.
Wow, I didn't expect that one. Why backwards? Take us down.
Because you can run backwards and you can run forwards, right?
Yeah, but you tend to take over if you when running backwards.
Yeah, and that's where we are. We are at a tipping point in the country, and I don't say that with any great sense of joy. I say it with a sense of sadness that our country is running backwards. We are not making progress. 1 year into, almost 1 year into this new administration, and after the unity government, we have seen little to no progress in terms of the key components that builds a country. And well, infrastructure for one. When we talk about our roads, our electric grid, when we talk about water and sewage, we saw the extensive debate in the House of Assembly on water and sewage. We hear the cries of the people in terms of the electrical surcharge. Our roads, we know, have been a colossal disaster for many years. You know, we have not seen any progress there. When you speak about the economy, which is another building block of any country, the economy is shrinking. People are crying, businesses are crying. Financial services continue to be under threat. You and I were speaking before the set about the whole issue of beneficial ownership register that the UK has debated in the House of Assembly, House of Parliament just yesterday, and Margaret Hodge in the Parliament has raised this issue again. It was, supposed to be implemented by the end of 2023, and it has not been. So what they will do with their order in council, we are not sure. So not only our financial sector is under threat, but local businesses, because the economy is not expanding, are feeling the pressure. So, and if the businesses feel the pressure, their employees will feel the pressure, because they're not getting raises, they're not getting bonuses, all of the, you just don't have that economic activity to facilitate employment, give raises, and all of that. Our tourism product, which is a pillar of our economy. I was speaking in King Garden Bay, and they said, the tourist ship come in and the people are not spending. They get off the ship, they come to King Garden Bay. By 2 o'clock or so, they're back on the ship, and they're gone.
Most times they come in now with the bags, and they have their drinks and stuff.
Absolutely.
With them.
So in King Garden Bay, I was speaking to someone who works at Quito's. I was speaking to someone who works at Paradise. And those are just two of the main businesses on the beach in King Garden Bay, whereas they would have great activity from the people of the cruise ship. They're not seeing that because people are keeping money in their pockets. They don't have as much disposable income.
So before you go on that, if we could dwell on that particular point right now, when we carefully examine that scenario that you're talking about, it tells us of a greater story.
Yes.
A story that not just
Local.
isolated to us here in the
Absolutely.
Virgin Islands, but a global situation.
Absolutely.
How do we find a way around this?
Well, that's what diversification is all about. And that is what you heard me very vocal against the suspension of the Trade Commission, because the Trade Commission, part of its charter was to stimulate help to stimulate the economy by finding opportunities, empowering local entrepreneurs, finding and looking for opportunities both regionally and internationally to help the BVI economy to grow. Because if we continue to build our house on another man's dollar, which is necessary, and we don't diversify the economy and just rely particularly on financial services and tourism, then we are putting ourselves at risk continually. But we have become so comfortable with those two pillars that we have not recognized that in the region, St. Kitts, what St. Kitts is doing, what Cayman is doing, what St. Thomas is doing, what St. Lucia is doing, Anguilla is doing to expand their tourism product. While we have great sailing waters, we have really very little land-based tourist accommodation on our land, except for the outer islands like Oil Not Being Little Dix, which is not appealing to the people with a $200 a night hotel.
Yes.
So all of those things, you have to diversify your economy. So if you move on to akin to that is what we're doing with the environment. Our oceans, our beaches, they are being deteriorated. The quality of our water is just being deteriorated. While I was in Turks and Caicos a couple of years ago, and I look at how pristine their water is, how white their sand is, people want to go to that. They don't want to go to a place where the beach is brown. They have that in Miami. They have that in Fort Lauderdale and South Carolina. So we have done very little to ensure that we protect, preserve, and restore our natural resource, what we sell.
Okay.
And we sell that to the world. So those are just some of the issues that we have not seen any progress in those areas that will move our country forward. And even the countries like St. Vincent that really don't have, except for Bequia and stuff like that, they don't really have a tourism product. You see them making efforts to expand the economy. They have been in Dominica, 2 major hotel developments there, in Portsmouth and the other place, I don't know it that well, but I saw the one in Portsmouth. And people are going to these places because they have a good product, while Prospect Reef sits as an eyesore on one of the most precious piece of real estate
Prime.
on the island. So,
But we hear from the premier and other ministers within the government and the cabinet that things like the Prospect Reef, they're beginning to make some moves there. In particular, with the sewage, water and sewage, we hear that tenders are going out, money is allotted to do XYZ, moves already in train to get certain things in action to try to tackle this situation. We say that 1 year has passed, and for us, basically, I'm just using the word us in a general sense, we have not seen physical stuff happening, and it seems as though we are kind of forcing the hands of the government to bypass procedures. When we start to talk about these things, we hear the Commission of Inquiry was on us, and we're not going to take this risk of pushing this way or we are going to do it by the books. How do we make a balance in fair judgment?
the Commission of Inquiry is what it was. It was designed to help to stamp out any type of corruption, to streamline processes of good governance. That doesn't stop us from doing what we normally did. We've done this. We ain't just come. So contracts have been awarded in a legal and fair manner for many years through the tender process. Nothing stops that. The Commission of Inquiry doesn't stop that. Let the Commission of Inquiry do what it's designed to do.
But we hear the government saying that, the minister
because it's an excuse.
No, they are saying, yes, we did this in the past. But when you talk to civil servants who sit in certain offices, you will hear them say, not me. This got to be done. This line got to be crossed. This T got to get its crossed, and the I got to get its dotted. And they are not moving.
I don't believe. I don't
expect pace.
Yeah, I don't believe both are mutually exclusive. I believe you can cross your I's. Cross your T's and dot your I's and still get things done.
Expeditiously.
Expeditiously.
Okay.
If you send out a tender, you get it back, you sit on it, you have your committee, you evaluate it, you see where you have value for money, who can qualify to deliver the product, and let's move forward. And if you do that, then when it comes to scrutiny, it holds up because you have followed the process. It doesn't have to take 6 months longer.
But would you think that, would you buy into the notion that there needs to be a somewhat overhaul of the process of getting finances out in doing certain things with government? Because every step of the way you hear government system takes a long time.
Well, you hit a critical point, and that is getting the money out of government. And the Minister of Finance is the premier. And if funds are not allocated to do these things out of his office, then you have that bottleneck, then you have that slow up. So I wouldn't always blame the process. I think the process works if it's followed. Just follow the process. If you put it in place, just follow it. It's simple. The money to do it is another thing if it's allocated. I think it can get done. And it doesn't have to take, to the end of another administration for us to see activity. And this seems like where we're heading. We have 1 year that is just about over. What are we going to hear next year? That the COI again, or this and that? And too many excuses, too many talkers, not enough doers, and consequently, the country is in reverse.
But the premier stands on the airwaves and says, watch me work, baby.
I love our dear premier. I've always said said it, but people, Honorable Fraser said one thing, who know how to do thing, right? And one of the failures of our electorate in this country is continue to elect people who can talk well, but not do well. And we don't need talkers in this season. We need people who can get things done. And I'm not even suggesting you have to know everything, but surround yourself with people who know how to get things done. Give them the authority, finance your project, and give them timelines in which you want these projects delivered. And if you do that, you, at the end of a year, the premier should, at the end of each year of his 4-year term, his government should be able to come back to the people and say, we have done this, we have done that, we have done that, we have done this. At the end of each year. Not excuses and good speeches and enough of the talk. I mean, just enough. We are not moved by eloquence.
Okay, let's come back to the Trade Commission.
Yes.
This is one of the areas that you have a serious concern with.
Yes.
We would have all listened to both sides. Well, in my space, would have listened to both sides of the coin. And what stands out to me with the Trade Commission is that it's being said it's where it's at right now because certain things that needed to be done within a certain time frame were not done, and hence we need to go back to the drawing tables. So we are not suspending completely, we are just temporarily putting a short-term system in place to revisit the system. What's your take?
My take is the commission was established. The board was appointed. The minister in charge of the subject had full access to the chairman and the board to express her priorities, her wishes, and her vision. There's nothing, absolutely nothing, that could not be done with the board and the commission in place that would be done by suspending it. It's a fallacy to think that you have a whole group of people working designated for stimulating and ensuring that business licenses are issued in a equitable and fair and speedy manner, that there is a plan in place to increase the 30-year-old revenue stream of business licenses, to create economic stimulation, and all the other things that there's nothing there that could not be done. Because I know the chairman, and he is a very open man to whatever. We serve at the pleasure of the minister. So if the minister come in and say today, listen guys, I don't like the way this is being done, or I don't like the speed in which this is being done, let us make that change. It goes to the top. It goes to the top. The only thing that I see that was taken away really from our minister that has been traditionally done in her over 30 years of being permanent secretary is the issue of business licenses. And that was always under the remit of the minister for the subject. Nothing else. Everything else can be done. So I never bought it. I still don't buy it. I do wish her well in terms of whatever efforts she has, because in wishing her well and seeing her succeed, the country wins.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, that's all we want, is the country to win. This is not political. It is national. But oftentimes we get caught up in political games and the country suffers. Our national agenda suffers. But if you had a national plan, and the Trade Commission is a part of your national development plan, it would be allowed to work.
Okay, so sometimes I struggle to understand when we position certain things to an individual's plan, when in most cases what's required, a plan to be implemented that is agreed to by the people of whom you're elected to serve.
Absolutely.
So to say her plan, her wishes for me or any minister's wish should be to execute what I know that the people want, and that loophole comes when we fail to have sit-downs with the people, to caucus with the people, to understand where they want to go or what they think is the best path. And I've been hearing this complaint a lot, especially in the business sector, that we are kind of separated and not, the government is not necessarily on the same path. We are the ones into business. We know how business goes and its ins and outs. And they seem to think that the ministers are not in that space.
Well, first of all, the ministers are not business people. Hardly any of them has owned one business in their entire life. They just do not understand economic stimulation.
But it's you, the people, who put them there.
I wouldn't say, you know, I beg to differ a little bit. Mm-hmm. The people voted for change. Mm-hmm. Personalities and personal wishes got in the way of that change, and we have what we have today. But the people voted for change. That was obvious. Party politics and power and all of that, and personal, God knows, disaster. We spoke about that, and how we got to that point. So we have what we have, and we have to work with it, but still represent your people, still move your country forward. Don't come to us. The government seems to be very reactive. So after an interview like this,
you see something happen.
You will see something happen, or you'll hear them come back and say, well, Bishop was wrong, or the leader of the opposition was wrong, or this was wrong, or whatever. Forget all that. Let us agitate you into action. We are agitators. We are your employers, and we need to hold you accountable. They just don't want to be held accountable.
But the thing is that you are the more power, well, I should say us, the people of the territory are the greater power. If we think that this needs to move at a greater pace, I think it's time for persons to wake up and realize that the kind of power they hold in their hands as a voting citizen, and to push and press. And one of the ways you can do this, be vocal. We have just a few people within this territory who stand up and speak.
Yes, and that's one of the problems. Part of the problem is people will speak in silos. You are on the chat, one VI agenda, and you see all the back and forth that's there. People have a lot to say. Ask them to come out front and make their voices heard for the good of their country, for the uplifting of their country. They're not going to do that. And some persons just want to find every way in which things can't be done instead of how it can be done. And we have to move. I'm at a loss, to tell you the truth, Kathy, as to where we are in the Virgin Islands at this point and in the life of our country. I am just appalled as to where we are. Something has to give. You know, you hear the leader of the opposition talking about the premier getting on a plane in the middle of the budget debate and all of that. All of these things reflect badly when you don't see the activity necessary to move the country forward. if you want to be the ambassador to the world, then let's create that portfolio for somebody to go to these conferences around the world and voice the interests of the Virgin Islands. But we didn't elect you to do that.
So you're saying that the people need to see our ministers travel less and stay home and do more?
If you could walk and chew gum, fine. If you could travel and still get things done, that's fine. Mm-hmm. But when we see you traveling abroad and nothing being done at home, that's a problem. It's a problem for us. Okay. You don't see Biden, let's use the U.S. I mean, there's a different structure, all the thing. You don't see him going all about. You see Kamala, you see Blinken, the foreign minister, the ambassadors to this here. They're the ones who go because they're domestic and national issues at home that needs to be addressed. And that's what you do. That's you don't have to be everywhere. And if you cannot recognize as a leader of the country the necessity for economic expansion, when you have to get up and do all these projections in your budget speech, and you have, like, if you listen to that budget speech, you have incremental, very small, incremental revenue generation coming from some of these things.
That was the next area that we were.
It's not major. It's not major at all.
Yes,
and that doesn't alarm you. That doesn't alarm you that from immigration or customs you're going to have a 2% increase. That doesn't alarm you that from financial services you are seeing minimal increments, if any at all. Sometimes it has flatlined. You have economic substance that's still out there. You have beneficial ownership register that's still out there. You have all of this stuff about money laundering. The UK has made this about their national security. What about our financial security? One of the persons in the debate in the UK spoke about, have we heard, why isn't there a voice from the overseas territory on this matter? Mm-hmm. Another one got up and said, why can't we recognize that progress has been made? Because they have no interest in our financial security. They have interest in their national security, which is a farce. But at any rate, you come back home and you see that your budget is not growing. Your projections are such that you know that you cannot be able to position yourself to borrow money because you don't have the revenue. Your expenses are growing because you have no measures to cut spending. There's none.
But it was alluded to in the Premier's budget estimate presentation, that they need to be able to cut spending, especially in the government areas.
Of course they need to, but they ain't going to do nothing. They won't. They have not done anything for years. It's been recognized for years that the country is top-heavy with government. Government is the largest employer in the country, rightly so. But there's a lot of redundancy. You and I have often spoke about the two workforces that exist in the country. You have a workforce that is inactive. They're called pensioners. They're collecting monies every month. And then you have an active workforce that is not efficient. The HR needs to do, if you want to do a analysis or a COI, do it on the human resources. If the governor wants to take his role serious in the country, him and the deputy governor, both of them must do what we would call some type of a human resource analysis, that's not the word I'm looking for, as to where the gaps are, where we are overloaded, streamline the system, get people optimal, cut out some of the wastage. They're not going to do it because it puts people out of work.
But if you're strategic in that reassessment, realigning, redefining, better allocating of your resources, your human resources will and can see a person still remaining in their remaining employed.
Right.
If you strategically do
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely.
And I think we can.
For instance, at Trade Department, when we got there, their biggest cry was for people.
Yeah.
We don't have the people to do what we have to do. So people can be reassigned if you do this human resource audit. And that's the word I was looking for. An audit of your whole human resource and see where the gaps are and where the needs are. Fill those needs, make your system more efficient, and run government in an efficient way. What we're doing now is playing into the hands of the United Kingdom.
Some persons were thinking we're going to have to wrap up in a little bit, but I have one other thing for us to talk about. But on that particular note that we were on there, some people think that because we are such a small community, where everyone is someone's relative, everyone is someone's brother, sister, that audit that you are talking about may not be best done by our own.
And that is true. I don't even think we have the
expertise
and the resource, the human resource to do it. I think it will be money well spent if we can do human resource audit of the government. And but again, the government will tell you we really can't do it because we're not in charge of the civil servants. So let us call on the governor, let us call on the deputy governor to do something that we can recognize that will benefit the country, instead of the governor always want this hammer over our head about the COI. You have other responsibilities. It's not just national security. Is this civil servant machinery that you're responsible running effectively and efficiently? And you are doing nothing to ensure it does.
Yeah, with that mention of governor, we do have a new governor expected next month. We're in the phase of saying farewell to His Excellency Governor John J. Rankin. A quick assessment in your view of his performance during his tenure here.
I would give him a C+. If I were to grade him, I would give him a C+. His positive grade was his ability to integrate within the greater community, and show what seems to be a genuine liking for the social, cultural activities in the Virgin Islands. When it comes to national leadership and oversight, he is more interested, like most governors are, in what the UK wishes are, instead of taking the wishes of the Virgin Islands to the UK. You cannot be the governor of the Virgin Islands and only be interested in the UK's agenda and executing their agenda. Now, the COI, I'm sure Governor Rankin would say, was him and the UK looking out for the BVI, and that's fine. We appreciate what the COI brought to light. What we do not appreciate is
Or brought to light or put on a center stage, because 99.9% of what came out is what was known before.
what was known. Put it on center stage. You're right. Now what we need is a partner, and we've always called for this, in the UK, a true visible partner in the UK come alongside us to ensure that government structures and systems are properly put in place. Civil servants are educated in terms of and re-educated in terms of their roles and responsibilities and how to efficiently do this and that. And if they can do that, I think they help the BVI. But what you're going to see with the new governor and the foreign minister, and I also have a problem with that whole thing about foreign, because if we are part of the UK, they talk about global Britain, but you still call us foreign. So you assign to us a foreign minister to come and speak to us, but you don't give us any representative to your House in Parliament. So what I see in the House of Parliament is a bunch of white faces dictating for a bunch of overseas territories of colored people what we should and should not do, without regard for how it impacts our quality of life and standard of living. And that I have a problem with.
Do you agree with the notion that you put it as a colored thing, but I want to direct it in a cultural thing, where while it may be good intended to help in supervising and manage, the UK does not necessarily understand and can deeply appreciate the cultures of overseas territories.
Oh, absolutely. By and large, definitely you're right with that in some regards. I use color because color is almost akin to culture and understanding what we value as a people. But let's use culture to be politically correct.
Yes.
When it comes to like same-sex marriage, it's not something we embrace. That's not our culture. It might be yours. Okay, fine, knock yourself out. You know, but when you're going to go to Uganda, when you're going to go to Kenya, when you're going to go to Tanzania, and all of those places and say, this is what you should do, or else we will devalue your currency, or else we're going to deny you visas as they've done in Uganda to the United States and to the UK because you take a stand against this LGBTQ agenda of yours. You have taken no thought or consideration of the wishes of the people and the culture in which they operate. You just want to export your agenda, whoever is behind it, to these countries, and mostly of color, because they don't go into Saudi Arabia and do that. Saudi Arabia, you're punishable by death.
Yeah, but it's slightly mentioned when it comes to the Caribbean region, where you see some level of respect when it comes to that. Very often you will see here, that's up to the government and the people of the BVI, that's up to the government and the people of St. Lucia, wherever.
There are some voices of reason, but they're not the dominant voices, and they're not the decision makers, and that's where we have the problem.
Okay, we have to bring the curtains down here.
Our time is too short.
Our time is,
when we stay away so long, there's so much to talk about.
Yeah, so we will be back. We will continue this conversation. We will continue to look at what, us as a people want to see of our government, to see where the progress go. But I pray dearly.
Oh, I'm with you.
Yeah,
I'm with you on that.
Find the strength to
pray.
Be that push. Mm-hmm. If we have to be behind and push you forward and you just leading and steering, let's do it.
I'm right there with you. We pray and we push.
Pray and push. Pray until something happens. What was the pray until something? I can't remember what it is.
Yeah.
Push. Yeah, push. Push. Yeah.
Yes.
Something happens.
Something like
that. All right.
that.
Yeah. Bishop Cline, it's always an interesting conversation whenever you sit here. We will not have such a long time for you to break and sit back and think, because there's so many issues for us to ventilate as times go on. Thank you for being always one of those voices, one of those few voices willing to hit platforms like these and to speak about things that matters to this country.
Thank you for having me once again.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of The Big Story. I'm Kathy Richards.
We know that where you choose to bank matters, and it is your vote on what your funds do in strengthening our community. As your official Bank of Paradise, we invest and support the lifeblood of our economy by helping in the realization of personal goals for homeownership, education, and entrepreneurial visions, which support small businesses. We make it our place to connect with persons and worthy causes, and we have been doing so for more than 30 years. Where your money goes and what your dollars empower are your choice. And we thank you for choosing us, a bank that gives where it matters the most, for you, for our community, and a happier tomorrow. The National Bank of the Virgin Islands.
Everyone looks to the future, but no one truly knows what the future holds.
The number of people under the age of 20 with type 2 diabetes could increase by 49% by 2050. Let it be known that we all have a 30% chance of developing hypertension.
Globally, more than 300 million people of all ages suffer from depression.
More than 60,000 young adults aged 20 to 39 are diagnosed with cancer each year. Obesity leads to problems such as stroke, heart disease, and kidney failure.
No matter your race, age, or color, we are all at risk.
These diseases can be managed or prevented if caught early.
But with the right medicine and the right doctors to keep us on a path to live a robust and healthy life,
we will live well.